You're watching Hello Nation.
All right. Welcome to the Hello Nation podcast, your voices of good news. I am Kevin Hayes, and joining us as part of our Hello Retirement Planning and Medicare series is retirement planning and Medicare expert Joe Garcia, founder and CEO of SafeHarbor Management Group. Joe is also a veteran. He comes from the United States Navy, and he's spent decades helping individuals and families navigate important retirement and healthcare decisions. Joe, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And being the voices of good news, we like to start by asking all of our guests to share a little bit of their own. So, Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself and, if you could, some good news, whether it's personal, whether it's larger picture, to share with our listeners.
Yeah, Kevin, as you mentioned, I am a proud veteran of the Navy, and recently I pursued my passion for flying. And next Friday, I'm hopefully going to have that license in my hand, so I'm very excited.
There you go. From the water to the air, Joe is everywhere. And as we roll merrily along, part of our Hello Retirement Planning and Medicare series, we want to recognize you as an expert in helping people prepare for retirement and navigate some of those important healthcare decisions. Today, specifically, we're discussing a question many people begin asking as retirement kind of pokes its head around the corner. What should you prepare for before you retire? And we'll explore Medicare, healthcare costs, retirement planning considerations, and some of the decisions that, might get overlooked in these situations before making the transition into that full-blown retirement. So we've got a handful of questions. You ready to go, Joe?
Hey, I'll try my best.
Hey, there you go. That's all anybody can ask for. Number one, right off the rip. When people tell you they're planning to retire soon, what are the most important things that they should start preparing before they even entertain that idea of leaving the workforce?
Kevin, I think some of the things that they should really consider is the actual expenses that they're going to have in retirement. We don't have any more paychecks. So we should be looking at expenses for housing, our food, our transportation, our basics, along with, how much is insurance going to cost us? What is our healthcare going to look like for expenses? And from there, if they're going to travel or they have hobbies, they should have those considerations all into one. Some of the things that we see over consulting a lot of folks is that they're not sure how they're going to come up with their health care because what we're seeing is a spouse that's retiring that might be 65 and eligible for Medicare. However, their spouse is 5 or 6 years younger. And a lot of employers aren't offering health care anymore. And so it leaves them in a dilemma. What do? We have a couple options, maybe the health markets, the government and or private. And both of those options are very limited and cost a lot of money. So we're seeing people not taking that into account, the cost of health care. Some of the other things I would, probably consider is, how is my retirement income going to be taxed? I mean, there's a lot of different strategies, or a lot of different buckets that people have put money into, pre-tax, taxed, and, how do we come up with the most tax efficient way of withdrawing that money so our savings last a little longer?
There you go. And just a quick aside for guys like you and I know, I get most of my health care through the VA as a crayon eater, a jarhead myself. I know that's certainly going to take me to a certain point, but I've also worked with veterans over the last couple of years to an extent. And there's some questions about, how long those VA benefits go into. And I guess even if you have something that's a stable, medical provider, something like that, or whether you have your private stuff, what are some of the questions for, some of those special groups of people as they look towards those later years?
The VA has changed. The VA, the way they cover people, the way they used to cover people, 20 years ago, was really, really great. And now it's becoming more specific and challenging to get these veterans covered for healthcare. So, uh, that's not always a guarantee. The other thing is employers, the folks should be asking their employers prior to retirement, am I going to be able to keep my insurance with you guys, or do I have to find insurance elsewhere? And the other question that they should be looking at, more importantly, is how big is my employer? So if the employer says, yes, you can continue on with coverage here, how much is it going to cost me to do that? Right. And then the other question would be, can my spouse stay on that plan as well? Um, and how big is the employer? If the employer is less than 20 employees, it's mandated that they're going to have to sign up for Medicare Part A and Part B because that would be primary. Now, most of the time, if employers are over 20 people, then the employer would be primary and Medicare would be secondary.
And as we kind of take a look at, again, these years right before you even entertain the idea of retirement, are there certain milestone ages such as 62, 65, 67, even 70, where people should be paying closer attention to that retirement and healthcare planning network for themselves?
That's a good question, Kevin. And I think, in our opinion, everyone's situation is going to be different. But if we say in general, what people should look at, I would say at 60, I would, start preparing for, maximizing my savings as much as I could, right? I'm contributing as much as I can to my employer 401k or whatever plan that they have for them. And then at 62, deciding whether or not, am I going to take Social Security early? And a lot of folks says, well, I'm going to take my Social Security at 62 because I'm not going to live that long. And the reality is what we're seeing is that folks are living 30 to 40 years beyond age 65. So we have to prepare for that longevity. And then at 65, do I need to apply for Medicare? And, or is my employer going to take care of that health care for me? And that's a tough question. And most of the time, it's going to be your employer is not going to take care of your health care like our parents used to have that safety net with healthcare, right? $5 copays, $10 copays, things were free. I remember as a child how free our healthcare was, but not today. Today it's the burden is on the individual to plan for that, and it's unfortunate, but that's where we're at in today's society. And at 67, they probably should start evaluating: am I going to take my Social Security now at 67? Most people born at 1960, their full retirement age is going to be at age 67. Is there an advantage for me to delay to age 70? The one thing that I didn't mention is that, 62, if we're taking our Social Security early, there's going to be a reduction in our payment. And how is that going to impact our overall retirement plan and my spouse when I eventually pass away? Right. So, and at 70, there's no reason why you should be delaying your Social Security any longer. It's time to start claiming it because you're not going to get any more money. You're maxed out of credits. So that would be, I guess, my words of wisdom.
Joe, I had a question because, nowadays with social media and everything, you don't know what to trust. I see a lot of the memes that like, hey, if you have this much in your retirement, this is what you have per year, this and this. How much of that should the general public believe? I mean, I would imagine the better move would be to talk to an expert like you, but like, those are things that I'm seeing a lot. I'm very conscious of my retirement, very conscious of wanting to retire. The memes scare me sometimes.
Yeah, Tim, that's an excellent question. I'm glad you brought that up because with all the social media today, with AI that's out there, everyone's an expert. Here's the reality of the situation. Yes, you could have $1 million and retire comfortably if your expenses were zero and you didn't spend much money and you didn't travel. Or you didn't have kids asking for money all the time, right? it doesn't matter how much you have. It's about controlling how many expenses you're going to have in retirement and what is your lifestyle going to look like in retirement. If you want to golf all the time, you want to travel to Europe, you're going to have more money than your next door neighbor to do all of those things. And we have inflation. We got to take that into account. And we also have to take into account the markets aren't always going to be good. And how do we prepare for that? Because if we're taking money out of the market to live on and to pay healthcare expenses, then we're double dipping. And when the market rebounds, we have less money on that rebound, right? It only makes sense. The other thing that I would say to those social media experts that, I have 1.5 million or I have 2 million or I have 3 million and I can retire. One thing I would say is you haven't planned for the unexpected yet then, because one catastrophic illness that would require you to go into a nursing home, and no one wants to talk about that. But that is a big ticking time bomb that's in everyone's retirement plan. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to plan for it. And then when it happens is, why didn't I think about that? Right? It's too late. And that expense alone could take half of their savings away. So then it becomes, what does my spouse actually live on? And that's the difference between working with someone who's worried about accumulating money all the time for their clients and those who are like me or our firm that want to help people create the plan first. And let's look at the plan and let's find out, build the contingencies in those plans in case something happens. And you don't have to worry about it.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah, just a little bit, looking forward to the future and all the absolute certainty in all of this. And certainly, we've taken a look at kind of the healthcare aspect. Obviously, the financial planning seems to be integral with it. When we take a look at those aspects and people come to, firms like yourself and the other actual experts, not the AI slop that we have grown so accustomed to, what do some of those conversations look like in terms of the options that you have and just the importance of that financial planning being a part of the retirement to kind of help and, be almost in lockstep with the potential for that, that emergency or the absolutely necessary medical care you're going to need?
Yeah, I think a good financial plan that someone can develop is going to be a plan where they have grips on how much of the outgoing expenses they're going to have in retirement. And then they have money set aside every year to meet those expenses. And they start thinking about healthcare expenses. Not only Medicare, everyone thinks Medicare is free. Medicare is not free. Medicare, you have a premium that you're going to pay. Medicare is not free. So I would say, start with planning a good budget, planning how to meet those expenses, planning if you want to travel. Make sure you have all those expenses, because when the market goes down, you should be able to cover those expenses and not worry about the television. And oh my God, the market went down 25 points today. Oh God. And then if it goes down more, they panic. And guess what they do, Kevin? Pull their money out and they set it aside in cash. And when the market rebounds, they miss the 20 or 30% rebound and they never can catch up, right? The other thing is, only thing that we can do is plan for retirement. That's the only thing we can do. We can plan the best we can plan. And there's always going to be changes. And I like to say this because earlier in the show, we talked about, share some good news, Joe. Well, I'm going to become a pilot. And the longer I fly, the more I realize that there's a similarity between flying an airplane, navigating a boat, and retirement planning. Nothing stays the same. For example, when we're flying, the weather may look perfect, but all of a sudden the weather changes and we need to navigate where's our best landing spot so we can come back safe, right? And it's the same thing with retirement planning. you're working for 30 or 40 years, you're doing the same thing every day, right? You're contributing the money to your 401k, you don't even see it. And then one day right before retirement, my God, I got deathly ill. And now most of my retirement savings is going to be spent. It had nothing to do with them, whether they planned or didn't plan. It was just an unfortunate event. And it gets really unfortunate if they didn't plan, because at least if they planned, they had some kind of contingency and maybe be able to save the retirement plan for the spouse, right? So I would say make sure you have your healthcare expenses done. Make sure you have all of your personal expenses, how you want to live your lifestyle, and make sure you're not depending on what the market does. Okay. And you're going to plan for 30 or 40 more years of life. My wife, grandmother, bless her heart, Helen Smith, 102 years of age. She never thought she was going to live to 102. And she lives to 102 and runs out of money, right? So it does happen, and we just have to plan for it.
Yeah, see, that's where your great-grandchildren got to start stepping up and taking care of you.
Yeah, that would be nice.
One more kind of deeper dive on the financial end of things. Again, kind of in lockstep with the healthcare costs. When I talk to people about my retirement as early as, I'm talking to people about it, the idea is, you want to diversify your portfolio, whether that's your investments. I've talked to a couple of people that diversify things to make sure that, should something come up with the market, with X, Y, and Z, that your one planned source or several planned sources don't all kind of get wiped out. I guess what are some of those options that people, as they look towards retirement, should look to in terms of diversifying the portfolio, so you don't just have a 401k, you don't just have this one or two things that hopefully is going to keep you afloat once you decide to, put down the 9 to 5.
It's easy said, but I always say something, invest in something that has passive income. Whether you're working or not working, you're sleeping, you're still getting checks, right? I mean, in rental properties, things like that. When you look at, what kind of things they can do, people say diversify. And I really don't like that word because it's been overused a lot. People think that, I have a 401k, I'm very diversified. They have it in this and that. And a lot of times when I look at their 401k and what they're invested in, it's all duplicated. It's all the same stuff, just in different companies. Diversification, to me, if I'm going to look at planning, I'm looking at it into systems. I'm looking into buckets. I'm looking into putting money away for a 12-month expenditure to meet my needs, my immediate needs. I'm looking at a bucket for a 5-year plan where I don't have to get as risky, but there's still some risk there. And then my long-term bucket way down the road, that's 10, 20, 30 years. Now I can become a little more risky with that, get some more growth. And when my other two buckets start to fail, I can replenish them with the growth I had down here. The misconception is a lot of folks think that retirement, once they turn 65, they're not going to live very long. And I would tell them that's not true. You're going to live about as long, bar getting hit from a car, as about as long as you worked. You're going to live another 30 or 40 years. And there's no reason to be scared to take some of that investment, make a great income, income that's coming in that can cover all your expenses, take the other portion, put it into a bucket for long term and invest, somewhat aggressively in it. Because you have 30 or 40, and the market has shown that the market has never been down for 30 straight years. The market's been down maybe at best 16 months, 18 months, but it always rebounds.
Excellent. So kind of getting back to the healthcare aspects of all this. And I know we've thrown out some ages, we've thrown out some deadlines. When people are starting to think about Medicare and that part of retirement, what are some of the key deadlines that they need to be, again, aware of before they hit that retirement phase?
Normally it's, when you're turning 65. But again, Kevin, what we're seeing is most people aren't retiring at 65 anymore. They're working until they're 67, 68. So the question that you're asking, actually, the better way to frame that is, what should we be doing? What we should look at? And it would be this. It would be, if you don't retire at 65, you probably should find out from your employer how their insurance is going to work. And if you need to apply for Medicare Part A and B, right? And if the employer says, no, we have you, you don't need Medicare Part B, then we need to not apply for our Medicare Part B, because what we're going to do is save that for later. So when we don't have insurance, we have a guaranteed right to come in and get whatever Medicare plan we want at that point. That's probably the bigger question. People who are on Medicare right now, then, if they're on a Medicare Advantage, then yes, they need to look at October 15th to December 7th. That's the time where they can make changes to their plans. They can get in there, and usually insurance companies sending them a notice of what's not going to be covered or what's changing. And they should review those with an expert. Honestly, they should review that. If their medications are changing, they should review that every single year. Now, those folks that are on a traditional original Medicare and a Medicare supplement, there are no required dates. They can change whenever they want as long as their health allows it. So I think that would probably be the best thing to do is, hey, if you're going to continue to work past 65, find out from your employer, your HR department, can I still stay on the plan? If so, do I need Part B? If not, do not sign up for it.
So, Joe, the craziest thing to me, and it kind of really, I'll use the word scares me, but I think about the small business. How many, you were talking about healthcare, how many employers do you know provide that Medicare B or whatever continued healthcare? I never even knew that was something. I just thought I'm on my own when I get it. Now, I got some time. The grays are coming in, but I got time. Like, how many small businesses or businesses provide something like that?
Well, I can tell you, first of all, no small business is going to provide healthcare in retirement. It's just way too expensive. And most small businesses are struggling right now, including mine, to provide that healthcare. But we know it's a critical benefit when someone's working for you, right? Large employers, because of the cost of healthcare, the trend has been over the last 10 years is to not provide the retiree with a benefit, with their healthcare benefit. I would say that there's very few, and I'm talking, it'd probably be your automotive industries, your large pharmaceutical companies that still have some sort of retiree coverage. However, they're going to place a little more burden on their retiree, meaning that they're going to charge them something for that coverage. And that's where the individual is going to have to look at it and say, am I better off taking my employer-sponsored plan if they offer it and compare it to Medicare and all the costs associated with Medicare? Because it's a give and take. There's no great answer for that. The employer coverage plan may have a prescription drug plan that's better than what Medicare's prescription drug plan is. So if you're someone that's taking a lot of medications or very ill, you may want to be on that. However, what I'm seeing on the employer-sponsored plans is that, the deductibles are not $1,000 anymore. They're $5,000. And on Medicare, and original Medicare and a Medicare supplement, for example, the deductible is $283 for the year. So people look at that, but there's also a premium expense. So they're going to have to compare the premium expense, how they're using it, deductibles cost, and then come up with a rationale of, what plan am I better off on?
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't even know that this is something I should be thinking about, because from my perspective, I feel like I paid into the Medicaid. Like, yeah, I want to use that when I'm older, but.
Tim, I'm going to correct you there, because a lot of folks say the same thing that you said. I paid into that Medicaid, but it's not Medicaid, it's Medicare. And I just want to correct you there, because that's a common mistake that most people make. They think it's Medicaid, and no, Medicaid is based on income. And Medicare is a benefit that we all enjoy as long as we've been working for 40 quarters and we paid taxes. We paid our taxes, and that's how we get our Part A premium for free.
Well, I'm glad I asked that then, because I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Hey, you're not alone. You're not alone.
And that's why we bring these things to the experts like Joe.
Well, I'm that kid in class where the teacher's like, "There's no stupid questions." Well, I'm like,
No.
all right, I'll ask it.
Exactly.
All right. So, speaking of Medicare, obviously, if someone is taking a look at retiring, they're going to keep their eye on Medicare. And the gateway to it, of course, is the open enrollment. So, Joe, what is open enrollment? When does it occur? And why is it important for retirees to review their coverage during that time specifically?
Well, the open enrollment is for people who are on Medicare Advantage plans or prescription drug plans. So once a year during that time, they have the opportunity to see if the plan that they're on is going to be good enough for them for the following year. So it's a year by year contract is how those plans work. And the insurance companies are required to send them a notice and tell them what's changing, whether it's if a drug is coming off a formulary, and that person depends on that particular drug, they may want to shop and look at a different plan to see if they can get it covered on a different plan for less money, or to get it covered in general. And someone new to Medicare, they just need to look at open enrollment. Really doesn't affect them. What they're looking for is, do I want to make one of two choices? Do I want to stay with original Medicare and get a Medicare supplement, or do I want to go to the Medicare Advantage? And that's going to be, there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's going to be personal preference. It's going to be based on budget. It's going to be based on lifestyle. If they travel, there's some downside to those Advantage plans. They got to stay in a network, and usually that network is in the county that they're at, unless it's outside of an emergency or something like that. So they lose a little bit of freedom and choice. On the flip side, if they go to a supplement, they gain that freedom and choice, but there's also an expense that they have to pay for it.
I feel like a lot of this is making sure that you're staying on top of it. So even as you enter retirement, as you're venturing through retirement, the idea is that it's not just, all right, you've hopped in the boat, now sail off into the sunset. How important is it for people to stay in contact with experts like you and across the country to make sure that as they navigate that sea of retirement, that they still have all the first mates and the people on hand that are going to help them navigate it?
Yeah, I think it's very important. I mean, again, as we mentioned earlier in the show, with AI, people are becoming an expert, right? But AI is only as good as the information that you put in and the knowledge that you have to get the right answers that you want. I fooled around with AI a lot, and I'll ask it a question, and then I'll start challenging its thought process, and it will come back and say, "Hey, Joe, that's a very good question. I didn't think about it that way." And then it would give me another list of answers for something, right? I look at this industry twofold. You have people who are accumulation experts and people who are preservation experts. And our firm, and firms like my firm, very few of them, are more of a preservation expert, meaning that we do things with post-retirement. People who are already retired, 65, or entering retirement, and making a planning process for those folks. The accumulation guys, hey, they're going to tell you things like this. Just keep your money, keep putting money in. The market will be fine. It's going to rebound. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. No one can guarantee what the market's going to do. We can't predict it. So it's okay because you're still working and you're still putting paychecks into those 401ks and everything is fine, because when the market's down, you're getting more shares of whatever you're putting your money into. Okay. When your market's up, you're getting less shares. That's just how it works. But when it comes to actually preserving the retirement, you need to think about other things. You need to think about retirement income, a steady source of income, because I just lost my paycheck. I need to think about healthcare, how it's going to affect me. Where am I going to get it? What if I have a long-term care stay? How is that going to devastate or have an impact on my retirement? Do I want to leave money to my children or my grandchildren? Do I want to leave it to a university, a charity in general? So it comes more into the state planning, and there's more things that we have to think about other than just keep putting your money in the market.
There you go. And as we take a look at this, again, kind of crossing that threshold, more specifically for that crowd that's listening, that they're planning on retiring within the next year. What are the biggest, most practical steps that they should be taking to ensure that they have that smooth transition into everything we're talking about instead of hitting that wall and realizing they're ill prepared?
Yep. I will go back to this. I think, in the next year, if they're retiring in the next year, they need to look at their investments, what they're invested in, maybe throttle back on the being aggressive if they were really aggressive. Maybe throttle back on that a little bit, because if they have a sudden market dip, they're going to go in a lot less into retirement. And it's called sequence of return. You could have two exact people retiring at the exact same age, but in a different time frame, and one still has more money than the other because just the way the market dipped when he retired, right? And then the other thing is to look at healthcare. Is my employer going to cover my healthcare when I retire? And if I have a younger spouse, are they going to cover the spouse as well? If my employer isn't going to cover, I better get aware of how Medicare works, right? I want to know everything about Medicare. I want to talk to some experts about Medicare. I need to figure out what's going to work best for me and my situation. And if I have a spouse that's under 65, not quite yet to Medicare, I need to start doing some research on the marketplace and what's available there. Do I qualify for any tax credits on that? If I don't, then what's my next best option? And how does that health insurance work? And if I can afford it, maybe if I have something to protect, I've got a lot of assets, I've got a lot of wealth, I may want to start looking at trying to mitigate my risk in the long-term care area. It's always cheaper to place the risk to the insurance company than it is to kind of burden it myself, because even if I could burden it myself, I'm still losing money in my portfolio that my spouse could use after I pass away. So that would be my best advice.
Being raised or starting to retire, it takes a village, right?
It sure does.
All right. So I do have one more question on here. I do believe you've answered it, but going to do due diligence here. If you're on an Advantage plan, how does someone switch to a Medicare?
If they're on an Advantage plan, the only way they can switch back to a Medicare supplement, first they have to wait until the open enrollment process starts, October 15th to December 7th, and then the benefit would start January 1st of the following year. However, they would have to be able to answer the health questions of whatever company they're choosing to go with that supplement. And a lot of times the folks that have been on an Advantage plan for any significant amount of time, a lot of times their health just doesn't allow them to be able to answer those questions. And so they're stuck with that Advantage plan. And unfortunately, that's the only thing that they can do. So I always tell people it's very important in your initial enrollment to Medicare when you're first turning 65, or when you retired after the age of 65 and you have another enrollment period to make a decision on whatever healthcare you want. It's very important to not think about healthcare short term. And what I mean by that is, well, I'm very healthy today. I'm going to take that free plan, that free Medicare Advantage plan, because I don't have to pay any premiums and I don't go to the doctor. Well, the problem with that logic is that our health as we age generally doesn't get healthier. We get a little more unhealthy, right? And so we need to plan basically our health care like we plan our retirement. If something major were to happen to me, what type of health insurance would I like to have? Would I like to be able to go any doctor I want to go to? Would I want to have freedom of going across the United States? If I'm in Florida and I want to go to Georgia, my health care is going to work the same. Those are going to be important. Do I want to see the same doctors that I've been seeing for the last 40 years? I don't want to switch doctors because these Advantage plans, the doctor has to participate with that Advantage plan. And if they don't use that doctor, they're going to get out of network cost, which is going to usually be double the price of what the in-network costs are. So I would say for them, really take a look at that healthcare and really make a great decision, not based on my health today, but based on how I would like to see my health insurance if something were to majorly happen to me. I had cancer, I had a stroke, I had a heart attack. Do you want those bills to be paid in full, or do you want to have to pay 5 or 10 or 15,000 out of your retirement savings?
There you go. Oodles and noodles of information. We've hit on everything from, running up to retirement, what to do during that retirement process, and of course, navigating the ocean of retirement. Now, let's go ahead and put all that knowledge to the test. It's time for Hello, Goodbye.
I got to just say, I like that ocean reference as a Navy man.
I've been keeping the nautical stuff on.
No,
point.
I noticed.
As a Marine, I would only ride in the boats, but I can appreciate it.
Hey, Kevin, Kevin, as a Marine, thank you for your service. But I will tell you, like I tell all my Marine buddies, there's only one reason why the Navy was invented. And that was to get the Marines to the destination of the war, because you guys would get lost if you couldn't have somebody give it to you, take you there.
No, that's fair. At one point I was definitely.
I'm messing with you.
I was dating a naval officer as I was getting out of the Marine Corps, and I would always refer to her as Taxi Lady. And she would kind of scoff at it, but whenever we were in the same route, I would salute. We're proper respect and all that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Again, thank you to the two of you. Thank you both.
Thank you, bud. I'm sure we both did what we could. And now let's go ahead. I'm going to give you a series of statements. You're going to tell us whether you agree, whether you disagree. You can go hello, goodbye. You can go, no go. And of course, just give us a quick explanation as to why you decided on that. Are you ready, Joe?
Sure.
All right. Numero uno. If you are planning to retire soon, you should start thinking about Medicare at least a year before that retirement.
Agree.
Excellent. Why?
I agree because you need some time to spend with your HR department. You need time to look at and navigate how original Medicare works, and then make a logical decision on which choice you want to take, Medicare Advantage or a Medicare supplement.
There you go. Planning, and if you haven't, more planning. Number two, as long as you're still working at age 65, which I'm pretty sure a lot of us will be, you don't need to worry about Medicare yet.
I disagree. And here's the reason why. Your employer may be fewer than 20 employees. And in that case, you're responsible to sign up for Medicare Part B. And if you don't, you're going to get penalized for life.
There you go. And we don't like penalties, whether it's hockey, whether it's soccer, whether it's football, yellow flags, no go. Number three, Social Security and Medicare decisions should be considered together when preparing for retirement.
Agree. Your Social Security, if you decide to take that out at 62 and take the reduction, and then that reduction is going to last the rest of your life and your spouse's life. And at 65, when it's time to get your Medicare Part B, that Medicare Part B premium's coming from that reduction from your Social Security. So the decision that you made at 62 could affect your decision you're going to make at 65.
There you go. Let's go ahead and hit the Medicare button one more time. Medicare will cover all of your health expenses once you retire.
Disagree. Medicare has Part B premiums, co-pays, deductibles, and co-insurances that everyone will have to pay. And along with their medication, their Part D, there's also co-pays that they would have to pay as well.
Fair enough. Here's a big one. One of the biggest retirement mistakes people make is waiting too long to start planning for those healthcare costs.
Agree. I agree with that. They come in, 3 or 4 months after they retire. They're already 65. And they didn't sign up for the Medicare Part B like they were supposed to. They weren't collecting Social Security, so it wasn't automatic. And now we have more of a delay trying to get our Medicare Part B from the government. So that delay is just costing them more time, not necessarily money, but it's costing them more time, and they're going uninsured. They didn't realize that their employer's coverage was going to stop so early. So the earlier you can plan for your healthcare benefits, the better off you're going to be.
There you go. That's a before retirement. That's an after retirement. I feel like that's solid advice across the board. Last one, even if retirement is still a few years away, which again, it is for most of us, it's never too early to begin learning about Medicare and retirement planning.
That's true. I agree with that. The more that you can learn about Medicare and the changes of Medicare and just keeping abreast of the industry a little bit, the better off you're going to be. Things are changing all the time. Just recently we had, one of the major changes is going to be to Medicare Part D. Through this administration, they're looking at cutting some subsidies. Well, that's going to create a lot of chaos this year if that actually happens. Premiums are going to increase for your Part D, and some insurers may just back out and not offer those plans anymore. So I say the more you can learn about Medicare, the more you can learn about safe investing in retirement, the better off you're going to be before you retire.
Again, planning, follow through, everything you need to know with experts like yourself. You heard it here first from a true expert, Joe. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights on retirement planning, Medicare, some of the important decisions that people should be thinking about before they hit that retirement button. Preparing early and asking the right questions can make a big difference, and we appreciate you helping listeners out to better understand the road ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
All right. And thank you, listeners. I'm Kevin Hayes signing off with Joe Garcia of SafeHarbor Management Group. We've got Tim in the booth, and this has been the Hello Nation podcast, where good news travels faster. See you next time.
Thanks for watching Hello Nation.